Hey everybody, I'm Brian Akerson, landscape photographer and time-lapse photographer. I am an ambassador for Timelapse Plus, MIOPS, and PolarPro. Today we are doing a webinar on waterfall photography, which is one of my favorite things. I absolutely love waterfalls. I can't tell you why, but it's just the rush of hearing the water flow as I get there. Today's webinar is brought to you by BenQ. They make the best monitors I've ever used, including the Emperor and the SW2700 PT, but we're going to be focusing on the Emperor, aka the SW321C today. What I like about it is 32 inches, it's 4K, and it's hardware calibrated with a 16-bit LUT, which is awesome. It really gives you the best color accuracy that BenQ offers. And I use my, use my X-Rite i1 Display Pro to get the best colors I possibly can. One of the things about getting the best colors you can, especially with one of these displays, is that you know when you send it to the lab to be printed on paper or metal or acrylic, you know what you're going to get back because you can see the full color gamut that your camera can produce. There's a 5% discount below in the comments there for select SW, PTs, and PD displays. Now, one would say that the post-production is when you actually get home and edit the images that you've captured, but my post-processing starts before I even click the shutter release. First of all, I want to get it right in the camera. I really do. And for that, there's a number of tools that I use. Number one is the X-Rite Color Checker Passport Pro. And the proper filters. Proper filters make all the difference. This is the PolarPro Summit Landscape System, and it consists of 3 different filters. You have a polarizer, you have a ND filter, and you have a grad filter of whatever type of grad you need. They have reverse grads, they have regular grads, they have hard grads, they have soft grads. Everything is great. If I don't have one of those on hand, I use my trusty Peter McKinnon edition 2 to 5 stop PolarPro VND. And I'm hearing I need to raise the audio, so give me 1 second. That's kind of new to these lav mics, I won't lie. We better now? All right. See me going to the yellow here. I apologize for the delay there. Another thing that I use are the MIOPS Triggers. These are great devices that don't eat at your camera's battery. The Remote Plus lasts a solid day and has a number of great options on it for triggering. And the Smart Plus lasts for up to 7 days, has a removable battery, and it will last about 7 days is what they say. I haven't really put that to the test yet. So getting it right in the camera is a big deal to me. I want to come home and be able to work with the best possible image, and that's where the filters come in, and that's where the color correction comes in and the triggers come in. You have everything combined, it provides for a solid image. In the links here down below, I've included my 6 main Lightroom presets as a starting point to jump off from and do further editing. The presets really give you a solid start, and you work on them from there. Another thing that I really like is the loop deck. You won't see me using the keyboard much or the mouse much because the loop deck CT provides the knobs and the wheels and quick access to so many functions that you don't even need the keyboard, except for doing maybe your data input or posting to Instagram or whatnot through whatever different applications and plugins you have for Lightroom. So now to get to the presets here, I generally use a number of different settings, but the main settings I use when I'm capturing a beautiful waterfall, to get that nice silky, beautiful, milky waterfall, I'm using aperture priority, the lowest ISO possible, and I'm shooting in RAW, so I have the most dynamic range between RAW and the lowest ISO. Now, you could always shoot at f/22 and hope for the best, or 32 depending on your lens, but that doesn't always work out. So sometimes you need the proper filters to go about it. I usually shoot at a minus 1/3 stop or a minus 2/3 stop to get, or so that my highlights aren't blown out, because after a 30-second or 15-second exposure, you run the risk of blowing out your highlights, which is never good. I like to shoot it a little bit lower and go from there. I always use my MIOPS triggers because it doesn't wear on the camera battery. It wears on my tablet or my phone's battery and its battery. Like I said, this one, the Remote Plus, is good for about a day of solid shooting, and the Smart Plus is good for about 7 days. Now, the nice thing about the Remote Plus is that it will fit beneath rain or water protection, such as the think tank hydrophobia. It's really difficult to get the Smart Plus under it, but the Remote Plus really does the job. So I'm going to switch over to the other monitor here, if I can. There we go. And I have a number of images that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to be using the presets that I made available for download. Like I said, I have a preset for at the same exposure, plus 1/3, plus 2/3. So these are a select number of images. Actually, I'm going to work on this image first. What was really funny was I was out with my mentor and good friend Steve at High Rock Adventures in Hocking Hills, Ohio. And I am 4 feet deep in this, maybe 5, I don't know. I've never had to drain my tripod before, but this is one of those times where I actually had to drain my tripod because so much water got into it. Glad it kept my camera above the water, because I was very nervous about that in that very cold water, especially after Steve going all the way up to the top to pull down a rope that was there for climbing back up this. Apparently the locals like to use it as a water slide, which scares me. But when he saw this image, he was like, it looks so dark. And a lot of it was because I shoot with RAW, and like I said, I underexpose to maintain the highlights. And the look on his face when he saw the image on the back of my camera was like, yeah, right, that's not happening. I'm like, Steve, chill out. I got this. Done this once or twice. A little bit more challenging, but hey, let's see where it goes. So I'm going to switch over here to the other view. And so we're talking about this image right here. And this is one that blew up on Nikon's Twitter a couple of times for different variants of this. So we're going to go ahead and go in and edit this. This monitor, I'm not even kidding you. You get the full gamut. You get everything. It's beautiful. There is nothing more you can ask for from a monitor than the 321C. So like I said, I try and underexpose, which is what I did here, and you can see that I may have not underexposed enough, but still it was enough for my buddy to ask me what's really going on there. There we go. So I'm going to go with my waterfall sky. And that's just a quick preset to show you where it's going to go. I can do no sky, and you just get too much red in the water, as you can see right here where my mouse is. So I'm going to go with sky, since I do have that sky coming in through the water. So we've started off with the waterfall sky preset. Now it's a matter of fine-tuning from here. So the shadow detail, I definitely want to bring up in this one. The highlights I want to drop down, and I want to drop the tint down some. Exposure we can play with a little bit here, bring it up a little bit. And what somebody pointed out to me before was right here, is that face right here. Kind of spooky, I think. So with one preset that I have provided you in the links below, you can really get instant results. This one I'm probably going to drop the dehaze a little bit, and I'm going to come down to the aquas, because this area down here, these aquas are phenomenal. Try and bring some of this back out without bringing magenta back into the Slot Canyons fall there. So we'll bring the aquas out. And just touch the greens up a little bit, just for the extra pop. So you can see we went from this, the raw image that Steve said that, well, didn't say, but questioned whether it would come out, to this. Really quick, really great stuff. This had, at the time, a different type of neutral density filter, variable neutral density filter. I've since switched out to the better ones of PolarPro. So let's go back to our gallery here. Another Hocking Hills photograph that I really love is this one. This is a private property waterfall, quite possibly one of my favorites for a number of reasons. So we'll go ahead and jump in here and do some editing. So we're going to come back here, and this one has some sky, but not much. So we're going to try the waterfalls. It needs a little bit more. I think I'm just going to go with a solid without the 1/3 stop. And I'm going to change the tone curve to strong contrast. And now in here, the dehaze is a little bit low for my taste. I'll jump in just to darken that up. And then I will go back to the individual colors on my loop deck here and bring out some of the aquas here. I like how the loop deck actually switches from luminance to saturation to hue and all of that. Overall, from the start, the initial settings are pretty decent with the preset. This is one where you might want to jump on the tool here and bring out some of these colors. And I went too far. Always gotta love it when you go too far. At least when you recognize it, that's a good thing. So, started off with this. Clark Falls here. And you wind up with this. Now, one might want to crop this a little bit, so we're going to go back to the basic settings here and go to the crop overlay and just bring it in. Level. One thing I've noticed about Nikon's leveling capabilities within the camera, the guide there, is that it's not always a whole lot of accurate. And I want to move this just slightly up and over here. And give a return. There you go. Instant results. This one could use a little bit more in the greens. Maybe some in the reds. And I'm using my Loupedeck CT here to adjust these settings via dials instead of adjusting them via the mouse, which can become problematic. I'm going to bring the greens back down because it's awful strong. Now, one thing you have to take into consideration, one thing you need to take into consideration when editing on an Adobe RGB capable monitor is that when you convert it to sRGB, if the colors don't mend well after your edit, you can get banding and whatnot. And one of the easiest ways to tell is with the BenQs. I like to call it the hockey puck. I can switch over to an sRGB format here. And here you go, let's see here. You can see it as sRGB, or you can flip over and see it as full Adobe RGB. And when you have the full Adobe RGB, or the 99%, you're able to tell what you're going to send off to your printer, or you're going to send out outsourced to, you know, Artbeat Studios or Bay Labs or whatnot. You know you're going to get back what you're seeing, which is a very, very comforting factor. So we can jump back out here. This is one I shot recently, and this was more of a challenging shot because I had a lot of Canopy, and a lot of Canopy is why I have the two different sets of presets, because if your image is totally green above, you have this green canopy with the sun coming in above, it can become very difficult to make the water appear white. It'll like to take the tinge. Even though you're seeing white when you're taking the picture, the camera doesn't necessarily see that. So I will come into here and go to my presets and put the waterfall with no sky. And that was the wrong one. There we go. Nope. Like I said, this one's a tougher one. And you really got to play with the white balance, which is why I really like the Loupedeck, because doing it with the mouse, it can become very problematic. But when you do it with knobs, you can see on your BenQ display the update as it's going. Instead of, oops, I went too far, I twitched or whatever with your mouse, this is just straight knobs that, or wheels that you can use to adjust things. So we're going to go with the no sky, and we're going to adjust the temperature just a tiny bit. And this one was a really tough one. And I'm just sitting here with the two knobs of the Loop Deck CT, looking into the BenQ SW321C, trying to figure out where the proper warmth is to match it. And we're pretty much getting there. Now this is one where you might want to go into the deeper color control. And what I found is if there's no actual sky in the photograph, you can turn down the blues to get more white. So I'm turning down the blue saturation here, and the blue luminance. Might turn it up just, there we go, just a tad bit. And I'm gonna go back to the white balance again, since now we have a little bit more to play with. Because there was a complete green canopy above me. I couldn't even fly a drone maybe 10 feet above my head without it crashing into something. Again, I'm just adjusting as slowly as possible. And bringing it down. And there we go. Now once again, you can go over to sRGB and see what the colors look like, which are pretty clean in comparison. And this one would probably bring the shadows up just a little bit. Blacks down, clarity up. And this is one where I'm going to put the dehaze a little higher. Well, when you go too strong with the dehaze, you take a lot of detail and a lot of flow out of your waterfall. So I like to minimize how much dehaze I use. Bring down the vibrance just a little bit. I'm going to crop this one out. So the crop size here, and once again the Nikon's gyro doesn't always give you a straight up and down photo. I don't know why. It's happened between all of my cameras from the D610 through the Z7, which is what, I think I shot this with the D850 actually. So we can do this. This is one of those times where you do use the mouse a little bit. Get it within, get these points and these lines right in the water just for aesthetics taste. And apply the crop. You might want to bump it a little bit. I'm going to pull down the highlights. Which, every time you make it, there we go. So you're seeing these tiny adjustments one by one instead of using it with your mouse and going too far. But the BenQ SW321C is showing you just what absolutely you're going to see out of a print, especially with the 16-bit LUT and the hardware calibration. This is around near where I've gotten my best part of this image. And we'll go work on another one. On this same trip, I went to Cascades, which is in the Thomas Jefferson National Forest, I believe. Let's go ahead and do a little editing here. This one I did intentionally underexpose, as I did the last one. So we can go into that and give it a little extra third. This one did have sky in it. Now, because my presets say sky does not mean that the sky is visible completely in your shot. It's that the waterfall is open to the sky, open to the sun and not canopied in. So I'm going to go to Waterfall Sky here, that preset. It's going to do pretty well. Let's do plus 2/3. There we go. Bring the temperature down a little bit and the tint up. Now you see this, and like I was saying before, you could use the color checker passport, which is quite honestly one of the best tools around for color calibration in the field. That way you get what the light was seeing, or what the camera was seeing in that particular light. Don't believe I have a bad habit of not always making one, but I do have quite a few in general. Of course not on this camera, because they're camera specific, that will allow you to adjust very directly. I usually use Adobe Landscape if I didn't happen to have shot a shot of my color checker passport in the field. It happens. So I'm seeing a little bit of blue in the water here. So I'm going to go over to the color grading. I'm going to bring it down just a smidge. Actually, just to close that out. There we go. Bring the blue down. Bring the blue luminance down. And this is one where I am going to want to crop it, because once again, it wasn't completely level as the cameras told me I was. And just hug it in a little bit here. Give you a nice, I always try and shoot a little bit more than I really need to, just a little wider. And with the presets and a little bit of editing, just it's all minor. You have this, Cascades in Virginia. So we'll come back out here. Now, one of the images that BenQ posted for this webinar was Rose River Falls out in Shenandoah National Park. I believe it's on the same loop as Dark Hollow Falls, but it's a heck of a hike. This is probably one and done. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. You all have seen the before or the after picture. So let's see the before. In the before picture, there's a lot of blown out highlights, unfortunately, and I was trying to fend off swimmers who wanted to enjoy the very warm day that this was. It was really warm. I considered jumping in, except for I had all my gear with me. So let's go to the presets again. This one I am just going to do the sky with, and there you go. I mean, that's just one preset, and these are not the biggest deal in settings. It's just presets make the editing process just a slight bit easier. So I'm going to bring down the highlights here, and you're going to see some of the water, like right here. You're going to see some more detail in it. Add a little bit of contrast to darken up that water, because it was actually awfully dark, because this is a deep pit. There oftentimes people jump off from right about here. They like jumping off right here, right by this neat piece of wood that I think leads your eye into that direction. So we're going to go to the colors, and I believe we need to go down to the blues, if it'll let me. Bring down the saturation a bit. Bring down the luminance, which will allow you to get a little bit more out of it. Now you see the actual stuff that happened to get blown out. It was a really sunny day, right in the sun, except for this shady part right here from some various trees. And you're taking out that really unsettling blue to me, because that's not how it looked in person. Now the highlights, at a certain point, there is just something, you know, nothing that you can do. Maybe turn down the exposure a little bit, but then you need to bring up your shadows. So we started with this, and we have this. Bring down the contrast just a tad bit there. There we go. And highlights are about, the problem is right here it really got blown out, and there's no fixing that. Once again, if you overexpose, there's no real coming back from highlights. There's always, or almost always, a way to come back from the shadows. I always shoot in RAW, and shooting with an underexposure is a whole lot better than shooting with an overexposure. I was kind of rushed here as people wanted to go swimming, but they were nice enough to let me get my shots and get out of there. So I'm seeing a little bit of a tint to this, so I'm gonna turn the tint a little bit more towards the magenta. Bring the temperature down just a smidge. And started with that, got that. Pardon me. The one really nice part about, well, the many nice parts about this display are that you get the image that you've seen from your camera. I mean, most of the monitors that are available on the market today at like Best Buy or, you know, whatever electronics store you want to go to are lucky to even cover the sRGB, which is basically the web color format, a much smaller gamut. And you can see here that very fact is not quite as in-depth in color as the Adobe RGB. It's a lot cleaner in the Adobe RGB because you're getting the full color gamut that your camera can capture. And once again, you can send that off and know what you're going to get back, especially from like Artbeat Studios. Artbeat Studios has done me so well as far as giving me exactly what I gave them, which is great because you don't have to worry about reprinting, the cost of reprinting, and all of that. So let's go to another image here. This one is one of my favorites, and I didn't even know it was there. It's about 10 minutes off of I-40 between Knoxville and Nashville. I mean, it was no more than 10 minutes from the highway. And if it was longer than a 15-minute hike in, I'd be dreadfully surprised. I do have some sky in this one, but it's not quite the same as most others where you have the blue. It was a very overcast day. As you can see, it had been snowing and there's icicles. I was dodging those on the way down, and they were not small. They were solid foot icicles as I was coming into this little hollow here. So I'm gonna go with the waterfalls with the sky, just a test here. No sky, sky. I'm actually gonna give it a third. Now, you might say that the plunge pool here is incorrect in color, but it really wasn't. It was one of the most amazing turquoise blues I've ever seen. And that's why I really wanted to shoot this waterfall after I discovered it was so close to a route I was taking back from PPA's Imaging USA. It was right along the track, so I was like, I have to stop. It's 10 minutes, and worst come to worst, I don't get a shot, but I'd rather try than not. I'm going to bring the shadows up here, but I'm also going to put some contrast in over what the tone curve has. I don't really think it needs too much on exposure. As you can see, the histogram is pretty good to go there. This one I'm actually going to take the picker here and go off the snow, because the snow is obviously extremely white, to give myself a better white balance. And I believe it does. On this one, bring the blacks down just a little bit. Okay, a lot of bit. No, I'm just playing. And bring the whites up, just to bring it out there. Dehaze it just a tad, so you can get some more of this detail here in the plunge pool of the water flowing away from where the waterfall is hitting here. And I'm not even kidding you, by the time I was out of here, maybe 30 or 40 minutes later, all of this snow down here was gone, or very minimal at the least. Most of these icicles had already fallen into the plunge pool, but I'm glad I got there at the time I did, so I could see this and photograph this beauty. It's called Ozone Falls in Tennessee. It's not too far from Knoxville. So started with this, and we get that, which is actually, from my own memory, pretty accurate. So this is how it would look in sRGB. Obviously the aquas and whatnot are not quite the same, but with the SW321C and its 16-bit lookup table, you can see the full gamut of what I was seeing and what the camera was seeing when I was out there. This was taken with my Z7, my newly acquired 14 to 30 millimeter f4S Nikon Z lens, and the PolarPro 2 to 5 stop Peter McKinnon variable neutral density filter. Amazing filter. After I had purchased that one, that's when I went for the Summit Landscape System, because it's just the next step up. So we've edited a few so far. This, back to the Hocking Hills. Let's go ahead and get it right there. And let's go ahead and edit this one. Hocking Hills is by far one of my favorite places, not only because my mentor lives there and has shown me so much in terms of waterfalls and business and all of that, but I love this waterfall, and you have to wait. You have to either be there very early or wait in between people that are walking across this bridge that goes across the top here, because that's the way down into this little hollow and to a few more waterfalls. So this one I'm going to do sky, because I did have sky in this one, and I'm actually going to do, no, keep it there. This one I'm going to do, push up the blacks just for some contrast here. It's been one of my widest selling photographs, and the white balance was near perfect. Couldn't ask for much more here. Put the dehaze up a little bit. And then one thing that I like to do when there is some overexposure here is that I will throw a gradient filter up here and fine tune it. So a gradient filter with the overlay like this, bring it down and then bring this down. You don't want to toy with it a whole lot, so let's turn the overlay off. We're going to bring the highlights down, which really gives you a more even photograph. Texture, blacks down. Now if you've ever been to Hocking Hills, this is probably one of the most, if not the most iconic waterfall in the park aside from Cedar Falls. I want to bring the highlights just up just a little bit here. Open up the gradient filter just a little bit and then close that out. And so we start with this, with the original image and a couple of adjustments, a gradient filter for the top here in the sky, and other minor adjustments, and this is what you get. Once again, we'll go into sRGB here, which is probably not making a huge difference for anybody who's watching if you're using an sRGB monitor, but gives you an idea. And we're back here to the semi-final edit, if you will. This one, I would come into the colors, and I would probably bring up the aquas. Just down here in this water area. So that's what we started with. Lens corrections, presets, that's what you come out with. That's why I like my presets, is they, like I said, I tend to underexpose, not to blow out the highlights like right here and up in here. It gives you more detail in that flowing water, gives you that silky look, but with detail at the same time. I can always adjust the exposure later if you're less than a stop under what is being metered at the time. You're going to be all right. All right. Wow, it seems we only have one left, and this is Shenandoah National Park. South River Falls? South River Run? I can never remember which one it is. So we're going to go back to the presets here. And this one actually has a guy, you can see some of his lines here, but he was rappelling down the waterfall and then coming back up the other side, scurrying up the hill, and then coming back down again. It was crazy. It was actually quite the view, but it kind of got in the way of those of us who wanted to take pictures. But I mean, to each their own. It's a national park and it's to be used. So I'm going to go ahead and do the sky, actually the 1/3 stop. Let's see here. Yeah. So this one was exposed to the sky. I'm going to go with the brighter here, and I'm going to bring the highs down, shadows, and contrast up. The white balance is just about right. Let's see if we can't play with it just a little bit. These rocks were really red, really red. I love Shenandoah National Park. There are so many waterfalls, and it's such a great place to hike. So before, after, not the biggest difference, but there was plenty of sky above me. It was the face of the waterfall was exposed to the sky, so it makes it a little bit easier to get the blues out of the waterfall itself, because you can come down here and just slightly bring it down, bring the luminance down, and then go back to your regular color grading and bring up the whites. And maybe a little bit of the exposure, just to get that histogram looking right. Bring down the highlights again. There's your start, which is obviously underexposed. And there's your finish. You got a real nice photograph with minimal work. So if anybody has any questions here, I'm actually looking now. I apologize. I haven't even looked to see. Let's see some questions here. Sorry about having me in the frame. I was trying to just communicate. The great thing about these monitors and all this other gear is that you can capture it really well in the camera. Getting it right in the camera should be your first concern. Editing should be your last real concern if you're using the proper gear. You know, if you're using a good tripod, a good trigger, or your own exposure delay or some sort, so you can get a nice sharp image. Because if you start out with gold or what you consider gold, you're gonna get so much more out of that image when you do bring it into Lightroom, when you do bring it into a display like the SW321C. When you don't get it right in the camera, it takes a lot more work and it's a lot more frustration. And I've been there, I've done that, and really thought it through. And that's why I originally purchased my SW2700 PT, was so I could see the full color range of what my camera was capturing, and it was amazing. And the 321C, which is essentially the 32-inch 4K Emperor brother of the 2700, is thoroughly amazing. Like I said, it's hardware calibrated. It has a 16-bit lookup table. There's just no better monitor on the market to me, and I love it. The only catch there is you have to calibrate it every now and then, but if you want to make an investment in something like this, i1 Display Pro or even a Color Monkey photo will work with it. There's such a range. The spiders will work with it. You can calibrate this thing down so far that it just shows you the best picture that you can. And when you send that picture out, like I said, either to your printer at home, or when you send it to a printer, an outsourced print shop, you know what you're going to get back. I would like to thank everybody for watching today. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to watch. I want to thank BenQ very much for sponsoring my webinar, and I hope you all have a wonderful day today.